Okay, here we are with another episode of Behind the Scenes at Pleasant Grove High School. John Hanks here, the principal, and I am here today with Detective Chris Ruiz, who is our resource officer here at Pleasant Grove High School.
Hello.
So maybe Chris, take a minute, introduce yourself,
Sure.
Tell us how long you've been at Pleasant Grove and how long you've been a police officer, and let us get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. So my name is Chris Ruiz, and as mentioned, I'm a detective with Pleasant Grove Police Department. I am assigned during the school year as the school resource officer, and my job and primary function is to provide a safe and learning environment for the kids on the campuses around Pleasant Grove.
Awesome. And you've been at Pleasant Grove for, did you say?
7 years. 7
7 years,
years
okay.
with Pleasant Grove Police Department, and 6 years before that with the Utah County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. So you may have guessed that today we are going to talk about school safety. And so what we want to do is kind of take you through what our safety protocols are, what we have in place, the preparations we have in place in the event of a crisis or an emergency or an intruder or an active shooter, and then talk about what happens in our drills and what would happen in a real situation, and who better to answer questions about that than our resource officer,
There you go.
Detective Ruiz. So
Pleasure to be here.
just as a background, Chris Ruiz, Detective Ruiz, I'm going to call you Chris. Is that okay?
Awesome.
All right. That's what I usually call you.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
Chris is here full-time assigned to our school. He has other assignments. Well, tell us the nature of your
You bet.
assignment, just so we know how often you're here, what your responsibility is as a resource officer.
That's a great question. In fact, I've been asked that many times by not only school administrators and teachers, but parents as well, whose children attend our schools in Pleasant Grove. So as a school resource officer, and just a note of record, I've been doing this job for, it's my 6th year. So the last 5 years I've been working in the schools primarily for 9 months of the year. So it's basically a school year. I do travel to other schools within our city. I am a NOVA instructor, for those of you who don't know what that is. It's kind of like the DARE program, but a little different, a little more engaging. We talk about choice making and decisions and making good choices and things of that nature, and those to 6th grade classes. So there are times that I'm away from the Pleasant Grove High School campus teaching those type of courses. As an employee of Pleasant Grove City, we do have a basic understanding, an agreement with the schools in our city, including private schools and charter schools, where if they have any need for law enforcement presence, it could be anywhere, something as simple as a demonstration, a presentation, a class, to something a little more serious that involves, things of a criminal nature. I go out and respond to that. There are 2 of us here in Pleasant Grove as school resource officers. The other individual is Officer Devin Kirkham, and he is assigned to some other schools, but primarily at the junior high. Just again, as note of record, my office is here at the Pleasant Grove High School. I'm here on campus about 90% of the time, so most of my day is spent here at the high school.
So interesting. I was going to ask you if you had to guess what percent of the time you were here.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was thinking 90%.
Sure.
So
there
we're
it
on
is.
the same page.
Same page. Look at that.
Chris is great. His office is just right here in the front. When he's not here, we have quick access to the police department. We have the cell phone numbers of officers that are on duty that couldn't respond to us, and we can call dispatch. So you're here 90% of the time. When you're not here, we have very quick access. And so that, I guess, is the first bit of maybe helpful information for parents to know what we are doing here to stay safe at Pleasant Grove High School. So there are a lot of things that could happen at a school that could threaten the safety of our students. And so we could talk about a whole variety of topics.
Yeah.
But given the nature of just current events in our country, and what really is on people's minds is what do we do and how do we respond when we have an intruder or an active shooter or an immediate individual threat at the school. So I think we'll kind of focus the next 15, 20 minutes that we talk about what do we do to prepare for such a situation. We, of course, practice evacuations for fires or other kinds of emergencies. But what question I get asked the most as the principal is, what do you have in place at the school to keep our students safe when there might be a shooter or an intruder that threatens the safety of the school? So let's talk about that.
Let's get
That
into
sound
it.
Good? Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Let's do it.
So the first question, and we'll kind of tag team on this because we have the police perspective and the school perspective, But what kind of things are the low-hanging fruit that we can do as a school, that we have done as a school, we've done, in order to keep our students safe? So what are the basic practices or situations that we have here at the school, like doors locking and monitoring exits? What keeps us the most safe as far as those kind of things that we have in place at the school?
Yeah.
That was a terribly worded question. I'm embarrassed at how I asked that, but you know what I mean, right?
This guy.
Okay.
I tell you right
what
now,
do you do?
he's
I'm
awesome.
trying.
It's a great question, and it's a multi-faceted question in the sense of there are many ways I can answer that. So let's start with the basic, right? In order to deter any wrongdoer or perpetrator or someone who has the intent to do harm to our kiddos here on campuses, you got to have a presence, right? So the school district, in their great way of thinking, and this is an awesome thing they have, is having school resource officers on campus. So number one, the mere presence of us officers on campuses can be a deterrent, right? So that's one way that the schools can take that proactive approach in deterring any type of mass casualty event, things of that nature that unfortunately are unfolding throughout the country. The other thing that keep in mind that is a standard practice are drills. We have these safety drills that happen, and there are different types of drills that a school can do to practice safety, right? We know of the fire drills that take place, but what about the lockdown drills? What about the hold drills, meaning that you're holding students in place, perhaps in a secure environment, but you're not necessarily to the elevated point of a lockdown? What about an evacuation drill? So all these types of drills and practices to get in the mode of safety can be done and has been done here at Pleasant Grove High School, as well as some other schools in our city. So again, another way that we can help mitigate this and to deter any type of situations that would escalate to the point of having law enforcement respond and so on and so forth. One of the things that I've seen here done at this high school, which I really appreciate from a law enforcement perspective, is a communication that the high school has made efforts in talking with the parents, either through emails or through newsletters or just in person, talking about the safety protocols that are in place, the standard response protocols, the SRPs is what we would call them, which is great because parents, the more they get the idea of what the school is doing to be proactive, the better they're going to feel, right? More at ease knowing that their kids are in a safe environment, right? And so by doing these things on either a daily or weekly basis, just more of a continuous basis, parents are going to get kind of that reassurance that things are on the right path.
Right. Awesome. One of the things that we do when we've talked about making the school a safe place, and this has kind of evolved and changed the instruction that we've gotten from law enforcement over the years, but our teachers, the door to their classroom is locked all the time. Now it may be propped open as they're teaching, and so it could be open, but the handle is still locked at all times, every classroom. And so maybe tell us the reason for that, and why that has become a simple yet we feel like a highly effective way to keep the students safe at our school.
Absolutely, that's a great question, John. I appreciate the question, and the reality is this: Utah as a whole has really taken a proactive stance through safety, right? Towards safety, I should say, and we have now new legislation that is requiring schools to take a more aggressive stance and more aggressive step to achieving those goals. One of them, as you mentioned, you talk about locking doors. About a year and a half ago, the state legislature passed House Bill 84, which requires now some safety elements to be practiced in the public school system. Pleasant Grove High School is no different. One of them is having the doors locked. Now, there's a reason for that. And the reason being is because if something were to happen of a serious nature, and that door closes, it's immediately locked. You don't have to then require the teacher to put him or herself in harm's way, fumble around for keys, try to lock the door. It's already locked. They're in place. That door also creates a barrier. That creates also the barrier between the perpetrator and those in the classrooms. Again, we're talking about a lockdown situation. It's good thinking. The other thing that we probably should mention here, and that is the single point entry. Here at the high school, we have one entrance, which is our main entrance during the school hours. There are other, obviously, doors that are made available to access during the school day, during during the class exchange, I should say. So when students go from one class to the other, but only for a few minutes, and those doors are locked. And the reason being is because, again, we're trying to create that safe environment to deter anybody to enter our school premises from another part of the campus. So the single point entry here in our main campus, our main entrance, is very important. Which, again, going back to probably the previous question of what we're doing to create that environment, culture of safety, is having visitors check in, right? We want to know who's on our campus. And the front office is doing a great job of checking those individuals in. We have signs throughout the campus, a big sign that basically reads, "These doors are locked during school hours. All visitors must check in at the front office," and they do. We've seen success in that. They come in, they check in with the front office, they wear a little badge or sticker that says they're a visitor. They're directed to wherever they need to go to. It's a great way to kind of eyes on those people who may not be here as students, right? And so for me, from a law enforcement perspective, I want to know who's here, right? And so by having them check in, that's a great thing because we know their whereabouts.
Yeah. So let me wrap, you said a
Sure.
lot. I want to kind of summarize some of the things. And here's the way I see it. And you can adjust me or correct me from, but the probability of us having an actor shooter situation is low. We want to take every action to lower that percentage, that chance. And so all of the things that we can do to make that percentage as low as possible, we want to do. One of those things, locking the doors. If a student is in a classroom behind a locked door, they will be safe. In fact, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I heard somewhere that no student has ever been killed when they've been behind a locked door in a classroom.
Statistically speaking, it's the probability and chances of a wrongdoer or someone who intends to do harm to try to defeat that locked door is just very minimal. And the reason
not going to try.
They're not going to try.
Give up and go to the next door.
They're going to move on. Absolutely. And hence the whole reason for the locked door scenario.
So our number one goal in a drill and in an intruder situation with a threat is to make sure every student gets into a classroom behind a locked door. If we can have that protocol down and effective and happening quickly, then that is one of those things that we can do to reduce that chance of a student being injured in a situation like that. And so that really, the way I see it, we can chip away at that percentage, then those are victories. The second thing that you mentioned is locking our exterior doors. And this has evolved over the years because it used to be that just any door that was at the school was unlocked. We're a pretty open campus. There's a lot of entry points. And one thing that this bill has done, it has required us and looked at us locking those exterior doors so that people just aren't coming and going through all different points of entry in the building. One of the challenges that presents to us, if you know the campus well, you know that we have a parking lot down by our gym, by Valhalla, by the rec center. And so if we were to lock that door during the entire school day, students who park there would have to walk all the way to the front. So the size of our campus presents challenges with that limited one point of entry. What we've done then is we've unlocked those doors on a timer so that they're open, like you mentioned, you said this already, but they're open between class periods and then they close during class periods. So if a student comes while class is in session and they park out by Valhalla, by our gym, then yes, they do have to walk and come around, and that is an inconvenience. But again, we're trying to make choices that lower that percentage of something going wrong. Is it unlikely that door being locked is going to prevent something? It makes that chance a little bit lower. So we're going to take that chance and sacrifice that convenience to increase the safety here at our school. So those are two big things that I would say over the last 10 years that I've been in education that have changed pretty significantly. If there ever is a lockdown that happens in between class periods, that's a tricky one. And again, the safest place for a student is behind a locked door. And so what we would do is encourage teachers to get every student in the hallway into their classroom behind a locked door in a safe place in order for that. So that's one of the reasons why those doors being locked, so a teacher doesn't have to fumble with the keys, is so important, and we consider that to be pretty critical to it. So anyway, have I summarized some of the things that you mentioned there? Is that
right on
wrap
point?
things up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So in a lockdown drill, let's talk about what happens in a lockdown drill.
Yeah.
So in the classroom, what we instruct teachers to do is to stop teaching and to gather their students in a place where they can't be seen from windows and that they keep quiet. So what would be the reason for that from a police standpoint if there were a real lockdown, or in a drill where you were going to come around and check and see how we did in the drill?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So, I mean, we already know that there's a difference between a drill than an actual situation. But my takeaway here after all these years in law enforcement is the more you train, or in this case, the more you drill or practice, the more of the muscle memory it becomes, right? It becomes habit. We know exactly what to do if and when that real situation actually happens. So I'm a big advocate and proponent for let's drill as much as we can, whether it's a full lockdown drill or whether it's components of that type of scenario or whatnot. But the more you do it, the better it's going to turn out in a real life situation. Let's talk about the drill. Let's start about that. So when it comes to a lockdown drill, what that's going to look like is, first of all, I will call our Utah Valley Dispatch Center and just let them know in advance, we're doing a drill. This isn't a real life situation. Just heads up, if you do have some alarms go off or otherwise, or other officers are on campus, just know it's a drill. Second of all, there's communication that typically happens with administration and faculty and whatnot, letting them know of this drill. When the drill actually does happen, we have always instructed the administrators and also the educators here to follow a certain procedure. One being is you close that door because it's already locked, so then now you have a locked door. Locks, lights out of sight is what we say. So locks first, that means you've created that barricade, that barrier system. Lights, you want to shut down the lights so nobody can see inside and see that there's anybody inside the classroom. Again, this is even in a drill situation. And then out of sight, move the kids to an area of the classroom where they're not as visible, okay? And what we will do in law enforcement typically is I'll invite the other school resource officer, perhaps some other police officers, the fire department and other first responders, to just come check and go throughout the hallways, knock on the door, peer through the windows to see if they can see anybody, again, as if this was a real situation, to see if they're following that safety protocol.
Can I interject
Sure,
here?
please, go ahead.
So we instruct our teachers that if there's a knock at the door, never to open it.
That's right.
Anybody who needs to get into the classroom will have a key. So even if there's a banging at the door and the person says, it's the police, I need to come in, or we tell our teachers, do not let that person in, because anybody can bang on a door and say it's the police.
And I've tested
and the door's open.
I've tested that.
So we practice that in the drill.
We have passed with flying colors. So I mean, again, all because of communication awareness, right? These teachers do a fantastic job. Now transition now into a real life situation. Let's just say we do have a critical incident here on campus that now requires us to get to that point of an actual lockdown. What I just previously stated is put into action. Locks, light, out of sight, right? So the kids are going to be locked down. We as law enforcement will respond. And I'll tell you folks this, and that is, if something happens here at Pleasant Grove High School or any other school campus, rest assured the cavalry is coming, and they will come quickly. I've seen this done before at other campuses with emergency situations, and we have first responders there within seconds, if not minutes, to respond. Our primary job here in a lockdown situation is if there is an active threat on campus, we want to neutralize that threat, right? We want to stop that threat. Once we deem the campus safe, then we're able to start moving on to the next process, which is, of course, getting the students out, helping those that may be wounded or otherwise, or need some first aid care or what have you. But our first goal here is to try to neutralize and stop any type of threatening behavior that's occurring on campus, right? We've all been trained as first responders, specifically in law enforcement. We go through active shooter training and mass casualty event training all the time. In fact, it's required of us to do so to keep our certifications as police officers. Here in Pleasant Grove, we pride ourselves on the type of training and the frequency of training that we do. And we do it at various campuses. We've done it here at Pleasant Grove High School. We've done it at some of our elementaries. We've done it at the Pleasant Grove Junior High School to make us more familiar with those campuses if something were to arise to that level. So our officers, our own officers, will know where to go, how to get to this particular, a spot on campus and things of that nature. So rest assured, we're very trained and very aware of the needs and what needs to take place.
And we're very fortunate. The fire station, the police station is just down the street.
Yeah.
You're here 90% of the time. If you're not here, we've always had fast response, whether it's a real situation or whether it's a drill or anything. And so we feel like we're pretty well taken care of here at the school. I do want to talk about, I didn't put this in our notes.
That's okay.
But I know you're an expert on this, so I'm not worried about throwing you a
Okay,
curveball.
all right.
But we do have a threat assessment that we do. And so one of the biggest questions and concerns is, a student might say something and, maybe they're just joking about, bringing a weapon to school or some kind of threat. Kids say crazy things sometimes, but at the same time, nobody wants to hear something and then have something happen and wish that they would have said something. And so especially with a lot of the recent events that have been happening, we hear a lot of, if you see something out of the ordinary, please report it. And I want to echo that and say, if you hear something or if your students see something at school, always come and talk to administration or the resource officer. And what happens when that gets to us, and this is where you can give some insight, is we have what's called a CSTAG threat assessment. And all of the administrators have been trained on this. Police, of course, are even more trained on this. But what we have is a protocol once we hear of a threat, where we go through and answer questions, and it involves not just the administrator, but the law enforcement, social worker, school counselors, to determine if that threat is substantial or transient, meaning is this a valid threat or is this just something that a student said in passing and is not something. And so it's not just something that one person hears and says, oh, I think we're okay, we're not going to worry about this. That's not the case. There is a protocol, and that we've been trained. It was an 8-hour training I think I went to. We trained on how to assess whether a threat is substantive, thank you, see, or transient, right?
Sure.
Just to get the other one.
You got it.
So maybe take a minute and explain what that process is, what that threat assessment looks like from our end of it, from your end of it, and how that gets determined if the threat is something that's substantive or transient.
Sure. Great question again. And what it is again, John mentioned a protocol, okay? CSTAG is just that, and it's a way to determine the credibility of the threat. Is this an actual threat? Is it substantive, which means that this is something that was really meant to happen,
and something that requires some action.
That requires some action, yeah. Whether it's law enforcement action, whether it's school discipline, whatever it may be, but there's action that's going to take place. And of course, the other is the fact that maybe it's not. So in essence, what it is a form that the administrators have, and also law enforcement. We as school resource officers are trained in the CSTAG. I happen to be an instructor in the CSTAG program, so I did more than 8 hours. I had to go for 2 days of training, and
we're on the other end of you were teaching for the 8 hours.
Yes, and it's a phenomenal program, is what that is, and a great process. But in a nutshell, what it looks like is if hypothetically a teacher finds one of the students on a piece of paper that they're writing some disturbing messages, threatening of nature, or a drawing that looks like a little kid with a gun and people with blood on the floor, whatever it is, something a little suspicious, something that raises concerns, right? those type of things will be taken to the administrator, and that student is brought in and talked to. In essence, kind of interviewed, really, ask some serious questions about, and these questions, by the way, are formatted in a way that they're to elicit a response, right? We're looking for a disclosure of some type. And we want the student to be honest, but we also want some answers, right? So based on what's disclosed, we'll determine on what actions are going to take place after that. In the process of answering those questions, it's also determined if the threat is real. Is it substantive, which means that this person really had the intent, perhaps, of doing harm. And it doesn't even have to be to the level of, we'll say, an active shooter. It could be something like this person was threatening to fight another individual. This person was intending to do harm to another individual, or property to the school, or things of that nature. It doesn't even have to, get to the extreme that we're talking about here. But nonetheless, it's a great preventative measure that we can perhaps stop or prevent those threats, if you will, from occurring, right? And so
identify,
and identify
and assess whether
Sure.
or not, is the student who was reported as writing or saying something, was their intent really to cause harm that requires
Absolutely.
some response from us, or was it just a 17-year-old with a with a young brain
Sure.
that said something that they didn't really mean, they just weren't thinking, because that does happen too, and we don't want to overreact, but at the same time, this protocol helps us to be able to react and respond appropriately, and it's a research based. It's not just a judgment call.
It is. It's evidence
pretty
based.
rigid
Yes.
and strict. So.
And what I like about it, and we have, we've done this for a few years now within our schools here locally. What I like about it is that I've received calls from principals from elementary level all the way up to secondary level with scenarios ranging from very simple things, but they call to maybe ask, should we do a CSTAG on this? And what do you think, right? So we're kind of collaborating. And at that point, and my position has been, yeah, let's do a CSTAG, because there's no harm in that, because as John mentioned, it's going to show some intent there. Was the student really meaning to do something of this nature, or was it just, an outburst of emotion, perhaps something that was said in the moment, or not, right? And so I always like to just kind of err on that side of caution,
And it's since that training a few years ago, it has really helped me to, it takes out the subjective, or the gray area when you're dealing with a potential threat, whether, it eliminates that judgment call that I have to make. It narrows it down to ask these questions. Depending on the answers, it can evaluate whether that threat is in need of some serious
100%.
response. So,
Yep.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to talk about is, you mentioned communication. So we're kind of circling back a little to, in the event of either a drill or a real scenario, speaking of a lockdown specifically. A lot of questions that we get asked is about cell phones, and a lot of the concerns with our cell phone policy was, how will parents be able to communicate with students in the event of an emergency to ensure that their students are safe? And that is one thing as a parent. I also want the ability in an emergency to know that my student is safe and to be able to text or talk with that student. And so just to clarify on that, the cell phones are in the classrooms, and in the event of a lockdown, we know how quickly students can get their phones. And so our protocol is the door is locked, the lights are off, and unless there is an immediate threat outside that would prevent a student from getting their phone so they can communicate with parents, the teacher is instructed to let the students get their phones. And then we've instructed our teachers to encourage the students to communicate to parents, I'm safe, it's a lockdown, I'm safe in the classroom. We feel like if parents know and are aware of that information, that will help alleviate some of the stress and concern. And so that is part of our protocol right now. There's debate about the danger or the potential confusion that it could take with communication being confused and muddled. Our approach has been, if a student can communicate with a parent, that will put the parent's mind at ease. What we don't want in the case of an emergency is a flood of parents come into the school.
Right.
Tell us why that is the case, and how like having a cell phone where a student can text to the parent, "Hey, I'm okay,"
Sure.
would alleviate some of that.
Yeah. Listen, there's good communication, there's bad communication, and then there's miscommunication, right? I think that what we want to avoid is this mass confusion of miscommunication that may be provided by some of the students, right? If this was a lockdown situation, obviously it's warranted for a reason, which means there's probably something happening at school that's pretty serious, right? And so that being said, the last thing we want is people blasting things out to social media and or texting their parents stuff that they don't know, because that causes a problem for us. I'm a parent, I get it. I have a couple kids still left in schools, both in high school. And so I would want to know what's going on. What we have generally instructed teachers and kids is to say, we're in a lockdown here at Pleasant Grove High School. I'm in the classroom with the teacher, with the rest of my classmates. We are safe. Law enforcement is coming, right? Or they're here, type thing. More information to come. At no point are we preventing the kids to not use their phone, but what we highly suggest is for them not to send out information that is just based on either their opinion and or stuff they just don't know about. John mentioned also the parents coming to school and why that could be problematic. Well, essentially, if we're in a emergency situation, mass casualty event, or what have you, the school essentially is like a giant crime scene. And so what we don't want are people coming to the school and perhaps disturbing the crime scene, which could prevent us from doing our investigation properly. The other thing too is we're also talking about traffic control. So when we have hundreds of parents coming in their vehicles, they're blocking the way of emergency first responders who need to come quickly and do their job, right? Especially with paramedics and ambulances and things of that nature. So we want to avoid the school. There is going to be a certain place that's designated after the fact for reunification, for the parents to pick up their kids. We just went through this recently with American Fork not too long ago. They had a lockdown. They went through a procedure, and they did a great job of establishing a reunification spot. It was very well communicated with the parents. They knew where to pick them up, and if they didn't, police officers on the perimeter of the scene were able to communicate it to the parents and say, this is where you need to pick up your kid. So again, we want to kind of avoid that mass flooding of people and vehicles, that are not essential to solving the problem when it comes to a lockdown process.
Okay. Yeah. I think we've covered what we set out to cover.
Perfect.
Have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share or wrapping things up?
Yeah, I mean, if I can leave any parting thoughts, and that'd be this. Know that there are certified trained professionals in your schools, including law enforcement that know what to do. We train, we practice, we drill. The kids, they're great kids. All your kids out there, right? All the parents that are listening to this and watching this, they're smart kids, and I think they'll know what to do and how to react and act in a situation of crisis. And so kudos to them. They're doing an awesome job. I'm really proud to be in this position of a school resource officer. Thank you, John, for allowing me to do what I do, and the rest of the administration here. Kids are in good hands. They are.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
Just my last thought, parents put a lot of trust in the school. And we know that, and I know that as a parent and also as an administrator. Every time, I can speak for both of us, way too often when we see on the news something tragic that happens, every time we see that, the first thing I think was, what if that were to happen at my school? And what are we doing to eliminate and reduce and prevent the possibility of that happening at our school? So it is on our mind constantly, nonstop. We're always thinking about it. We worry about it, and even though that percentage is so small, the tragedy that it would be if something were to happen at Pleasant Grove High School is so huge that it's worth doing everything that we can to reduce that percentage so that we just minimize the chances of something happen, and if something does happen, we increase the possibility of keeping everybody safe. And so those are the reasons why we do what we do. And I recognize that the trust that the community has in us to keep the students safe is tremendous. And we feel that weight, and we take that pretty seriously. And so hopefully this has given you an idea of behind the scenes of what we're doing as a school to reduce that possibility of something happening and then responding to it in an appropriate way. And like Chris said, we have such amazing students, such an amazing community. We feel like we're safe, but at the same time, we want to do everything that we can to ensure that we're as safe as we possibly can. So thank you for entrusting your students to us, and know that we're doing the best we can, and we feel safe here at the school. And as always, if you have any questions about any of our safety protocols, you're always welcome to email, call, talk to either one of us. We're happy to answer any questions or concerns that you might have. So anyway, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.
You bet.
And that is it for this episode of Behind the Scenes at Pleasant Grove High School. See you next time.